My name is Chris Holton Jablonski, and it is my great joy and my deep honor to serve you as your minister and to welcome you to another one of our wonderful services. We are so grateful for the precious gift of your time and attention. So grateful for this service in particular because it's kind of a new thing. This is many of the pieces that were in our first live service outside on September 12th. And what we're going to be doing is sharing some of the elements, the sermon, some poems, and all that kind of stuff that was in the service a couple days afterwards. So it's going to be a new experiment, one of the many on-demand services coming to you in the months ahead. So we're looking forward to it, and I think it's really good. Wanted to lift up a couple things before we get going. We have our Vespers services on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock and Wednesdays and Thursday nights at 6:30. These are wonderful opportunities to be back here in our beautiful sanctuary. We ask that you sign up ahead of time. You can go on the website and also these emails that have brought you these videos. There's all sorts of ways to sign up, but online. You can also call Janice if you can't figure out the online sign up, but that'll be lovely. So please do come to that. They'll be short, about a half hour long opportunities to sort of be together in a quiet, worshipful space. And then in addition, we have still some openings in our small group ministry classes. Those are going to be like 15 openings still, last I heard. So do please reach out to Lillian Anderson if you have questions about that. Or you can also reach out to myself. There are going to be some other small group ministry groups opening up in the wintertime, so this isn't your last chance, but do stay tuned. And in addition, lots and lots of adult classes coming, lots of youth and children events kicking off, so do please pay attention. And if you have any questions, all of the staff is really happy to answer any of them, so reach out. We're all around virtually, and some of us are here in person, obviously, but it's always a treat to connect. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And all of that aside, we have this precious time stretched out before us. So come, let us worship together. Once upon a time, the squirrel was surprised when he first came out and looked, because the tree, his whole corner of the forest, everything around him looked utterly different. Both everything was charred and burned and had clearly been somewhat destroyed because of the fire. But then the fires, which seemed to have raged for so long, the fires were put out by a storm that came and dumped so much water, and the water loosened the mud, and the mud flowed down, and so everything was charred and covered and soaked and covered in mud, and tree limbs had fallen. Especially just near him was the center of the forest, where all of the animals would come and gather and see one another and share food and spend time together. It was his favorite part of the forest, and it was nearly unrecognizable because so many tree limbs had fallen and so much mud had fallen in, and even before all of that, so much had burned. And he started to get a little bit sad. He started to feel hope kind of breaking and crumbling inside of his heart, but he couldn't even pay that much attention to that feeling because all of a sudden he heard a thwap, thwap, thwapping. And he looked up, and his friend the pigeon was flying towards him. It's hard to say his friend the pigeon. They knew each other pretty well. See, the pigeon turned out lived with the beaver, and the beaver, who lived not so far away, she was a little bit grumpy. So they had only recently become friends because he realized that she actually wasn't that grumpy. He just didn't know her so well. And he found out that the pigeon had lived with the beaver and that they were really close friends. Anyway, the pigeon flapped and thwapped in. And she was very, very nervous and very concerned. And she said, "How are you, squirrel? How are you?" And the squirrel said, "I'm doing okay, I guess." And he stopped when he said that, because he thought about it and he said, "Yeah, I guess I am doing okay." So much had happened, so much had changed, but really, he was okay. But the pigeon said, "Okay, good, I'm glad, because the beaver's not doing well. And she sent me here because apparently you often, along with your acorns, you keep some licorice fruit." And she was saying she wasn't sure if she inhaled a bunch of smoke or if she ate some bad wood, but somehow her belly is really upset. Can you bring her some of the licorice root? And the squirrel said, "Yeah, I know just where it is. Wait a second." And the pigeon said, "I can't wait. I don't want to wait. I don't want to be away from her for so long." So the pigeon thwapped away and flew back to the beaver to make sure she was okay. And sure enough, the squirrel knew just where the licorice root was, and so he went, he got it, he wrapped it up in his little tail, and he started on his way. And it was a far journey over to the pond where the beaver and the pigeon lived. And to get there, he had to pass through all sorts of other parts of the forest, and he passed where his friends the hedgehogs lived. And he looked in, and thought he could see a bunch of little eyes flicking open and looking back at him. And he knew he wanted to check in on his friends the hedgehogs and see how they were, but he kept going. And he passed a big, beautiful tree where so many of the owls lived. And he wanted to check in on his friends, the owls, but he knew he wanted to get and to be with the beaver first. And so he looked at that tree, but he kept going. And he made it to the pond, and sure enough, the beaver was sitting out on a log looking very, very sick. And she smiled a little bit when she saw the squirrel, and even more when she saw the licorice root. And she started chewing, gnawing on the licorice root, and almost immediately she started to feel better. And the pigeon was so grateful, and the beaver was so grateful. And the beaver said, "How's the center?" And the squirrel thought back, and he said, "Oh, it's not good. There's a lot of work to put it back together." And the beaver said, "I'll be there as soon as I can. I'm already feeling better. Thank you so much for bringing the licorice root." And the pigeon said, "I'll help. What can I do?" And the squirrel said, "Well, let's tell all the animals and make sure everybody's okay, and then we can gather at the center and we can all help put it back together." And so the pigeon took off, and the squirrel went back, and he was going to check on his friends, the owls, first. And he looked up in the tree and he called out, but they weren't there. And he was a little bit worried. But he went back to the center, and he passed the hedgehogs, and he called out, and there was nobody there. And he was a little bit worried about his friends, the hedgehogs, and a little bit concerned about the owls and the hedgehogs and all the other animals in the forest. And he thought it was strange that they weren't there, but he went back to the center to see what he could rebuild. And sure enough, as he crested the hill, he could hear the sound of so many people working. And he came down into the center, and there were all the hedgehogs, the littlest hedgehogs lugging tiny, tiny little sticks, and the bigger hedgehogs lugging even bigger sticks. And he found his friends, the owls, were swooping down and carrying out what they could, and slowly, one by one, they were putting things back together. And just then they heard a boom, loud stomping noise, and his friend, the littlest hedgehog, the tiniest, littlest hedgehog of all, came up over the crest on the top of a big bear who had caused a little bit of trouble not long ago, but the bear was so happy to be back and do what he could. The bear had survived, and to see all the other animals had survived, he wanted to connect. Even the grumpiest member of the forest wanted to connect, was so happy to connect again, and he did. And together they cleared and they started to rebuild. And I love that story because that's exactly what we're all doing together right now. We've faced so much, we've been through so much. And now, slowly, we're coming back together. Now, slowly, we are beginning to rebuild. And we are so, so grateful. It was so good to be back together just outside just a few days ago. It had been such a long time. It has been such a strange time. We have faced so much. We have lost so much. And over again, I have been so grateful. So grateful for our staff, for the seamlessness of their response, for the creativity and care, for the strength and commitment they have shown. And for our leaders, our board, and all of our committees, for so many of you, for hundreds of you who have served in so many ways. Everyone's work shifted. All of how we do what we do shifted from meetings going to Zoom, from worship becoming videos, from coffee hour becoming online speed dating deep dives. On some level, everything changed, but on another, it all stayed the same. The container changed utterly. Our days changed utterly, but our purpose remains the same. The thriving identity, the powerful love at the center of all we are and all we do remains. And I will tell you, that love has saved me. That love has sustained me. And it continues to save me over and over as we face this challenging time. Because, friends, COVID is only one of the daunting challenges before us. Just a few weeks ago, we traveled to our cherished camping spot up on Lake Umbagog. This place we have been going back to for more than 8 years, and this one site in particular we know very well. It was a beautiful time, perfect weather, wonderful swimming, paddling, fishing, just a wonderful trip. But the lake was low, 3 feet lower than usual. 3 feet. And this is up in the mountains, so the lake levels, the rangers tell us, were due to the snowfall and snowpack. The land was utterly changed. The rocks we knew so well were so different, still beautiful, but a clear call. And this was the same time as the hurricanes and heat, the extreme weather, the constant reminders of our climate crisis. So as we face these ongoing challenges of COVID, compiled with the desperate climate crisis, I wonder about hope. I wonder about where and how we find hope in the midst of all that we are facing. Teresa Soto writes, "Hope is the thing inside you that says yes in the face of every no. The thing that will not give up. It's not a magical answer. We find ourselves in a time that is equal parts cruelty and confusion. There are even times when confusion is a tool of systems of oppression. It is control by which people who resist can be pressed to indecision, or rather, indecision can distract good people from a series of right acts meant to amount to organized resistance. Optimism is more than just being in a good mood. Regardless of the turn towards fascism we see all around us, we retain our loyalty to reality and truth. Our ongoing acknowledgement that each of us is somebody means that in an uncertain and confusing world, the certainty we offer isn't that we have all the right answers or all the right actions. Rather, we represent the certainty that whatever happens, we aim to move forward together. We need to get out of our own way as we give up the tools of the systems of oppression that we are a part of. We must choose to give up racism and classism, transphobia and homophobia, sexism, ableism, and other forms of dehumanization." She continues, "Our hope is not indefinite. It does not come magically from inside each of us, nor does it exist outside of ourselves alone. Hope is a practice we create. Just as mastering physical skills takes lots of training and practice, mastering communal hope requires that we stay at it and we do the actions that bring about new states of being and new futures. For me, this is the great blessing of covenanted community, the great power we find here. Together we build connection, together we build another way. Grounded in the truth of what is and reaching for the fullness of what may be. I find hope when I deepen my connection with you all. Not that the challenges that we are facing will magically disappear, but that together, we and so many others joined in common cause can change this world which surrounds us. We remind one another over and over that we are held in love, and that love is not only warm and cherishing, but it is a powerful fuel pulling us, pushing us forward. This is what I think the poet Khalid Mutawi means when he says, "Now that we have come out of hiding, why would we live again in the tombs we have made for our souls? Here we come out of hiding. Here we see one another, we behold one another, we are there for one another, showing up in love, showing up with soup, showing up with strategy and vision, showing up with learning and growth, showing up just days after our return from the beauty of the woods. We heard of the savage and blatant attacks on the sovereignty of women's bodies in Texas. And this on top of months of calculated racist voter disenfranchisement. And this on top of COVID and the climate and everything else. And I found these words from Adrienne Marie Brown, who writes, "How do we survive these failing systems, especially when many of them need to fall? How do we prepare for the opportunities in collapse?" I'm thinking about this in the era of COVID, climate catastrophe, natural and unnatural disasters, cultural shifts, long-term war consequences, from indigenous struggles locally in the US to the Taliban in Afghanistan. It's all connected. Decisions made from a competitive, supremacist, dominant mindset lead to top-heavy economies and infrastructures which inevitably collapse, leaving the survivors to contend with the detritus of empire. Much of this crisis now feels out of our hands. She says, even for me as a fairly connected radical movement person, most day it feels like a series of unstoppable events to which I can only offer prayer and donations, witness and attention. There are so many front lines, each equally important to the soldiers in that particular battle, seeing the pattern of life unfolding inside the destruction and chaos. I keep bringing my attention to it. I despair, and then I seek laughter, seek the community of others who feel afraid but keep working to connect. I relinquish being right for being present. I don't deny reality as I find my place in the present moment, and I try to be of the fittest in constantly changing conditions. Especially now, in the midst of this impossibly complex moment, in the midst of all that we are facing as a human family, as a community, as a planet, as a nation, we are here to seek the community of others who feel afraid but keep working to connect. We are here to serve. We are here to love another way in this world, to love this country, to love this human race, to love this planet. And when we see these threatened, when we see these precious gifts threatened, to rise up, to mobilize, to organize, to speak up, to live and love and learn our way into different ways of being. And so the bad news is that, yes, we are facing these challenges. Yes, the earth is in peril, but you can join our FCB Green team. You can take David Deese's class coming up, and along with you, David will fix it all. Of course not. But together we can do better. We can learn and grow and collectively act. Yes, our democracy is in peril, But the same hardworking team that brought you the vote efforts last year is hard at work at more campaigns, more letters, more mobilizing to help support equal access to the vote and toppling of racist, dehumanizing political strategies. You can join our hardworking social action committee and show up when called upon. And quite apart from all this, being here, right now, opening to all of this, being present to all of this, being enraged and afraid, hopeful and despondent, inspired and weighed down all at once, and still choosing to reach out, still choosing to connect. This is the path. To be sure, this is a challenging moment. But we are made for this. The powerful love holding us all, this love coursing through this place and this community, holding us all right now. This love is sturdy stuff, and it is made for this. Precisely this. So much love to you all.